Hi, everyone, again. Hope you're doing well. As you know, we're in our series of emotionally healthy discipleship. And yesterday, I talked about the Americanized Jesus. That's the view of Jesus that when he came to earth, came here to make our lives better. That Jesus came to make our lives successful, happy, healthy, and enjoyable. However, about two-thirds through Jesus' ministry here on earth, he began to tell his disciples the true reason why he came to earth. In Matthew 16, it says, "From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life." Jesus' mission was to suffer greatly at the hands of the Jews, God's own people, including its leaders, and eventually be killed by them, but be raised back to life on the third day. Unfortunately, that model of Jesus did not fit into the thinking of the disciples, especially Peter, who rebuked Jesus by telling him, "No way that's going to happen to you." Peter was thinking there was no way that Jesus was saying could happen to the Messiah, at least the Messiah that Peter and the other disciples were thinking about. And in response to Peter, Jesus rebukes Peter harshly, calling him Satan. As an aside, Satan in the Hebrew or Greek means adversary or opponent. In other words, Jesus was telling Peter that he was opposing the mission for which God had intended him to be. In wanting Jesus to be the Messiah, the restorer of Israel, the one that would overcome Roman rule and raise up Israel to its former glory, Peter was opposing the plan of God. I'm sure that you and I do not want to oppose God's plans, but you may be wondering, what are God's plans for me in following Jesus? Sometimes we overlook the obvious. Jesus said it clearly about following him. In Matthew 16, in that same passage where he told Peter about being Satan, Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me." Jesus' commands about following him were very clear. You need to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow Jesus. In that statement, Jesus did not make it sound like they came to make our lives successful, happy, healthy, and enjoyable. It sounds as though hardship is something that Jesus' followers should expect rather than the good life. You may be thinking, isn't there a way to follow Jesus without denying myself and taking up my cross? Isn't there a loophole? The challenge is that Jesus says that his followers must deny themselves and take up their cross. If that is the case, then what is involved in denying yourself and taking up your cross? In Roman times, the cross meant death. Did Jesus really mean dying? Not exactly. What Jesus was saying was that his followers needed to deny themselves. That means putting God above themselves and being willing to die to self, to their own human desires, so that they can live for God or follow him. This concept was what was at the heart of what the New Testament writers taught to the churches. I'm going to read some passages to you from various parts of the New Testament, and you'll get the sense that the apostle writers wrote about. "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." That comes from Romans 12. "And therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come, the old is gone, the new is here." That's from 2 Corinthians. And here's from Ephesians. "Put off your old self, which has been corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness." In Galatians 2:20, "I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me." And Peter himself wrote, remember, this is the one that Jesus called Satan. To this you are called, Peter writes to the believers, because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his footsteps. Following the crucified Christ means that we are willing to put aside our personal desires and goals, especially if it interferes with God's plan for us. We will put aside our expectation that Jesus will make our lives successful, happy, healthy, and enjoyable. Instead, what we will do is we'll yield to God's plans, whatever they may be. Over the next days, we'll dig further into what it means to deny oneself and take up one's cross.